Question. And obviously, I understand that you would be aware of the Dan Markel murder investigation and the connection in the media and the press with the Adelsons. Is that correct? Yes. Mr. Loy. Objection to form. Ms. Furman. And you became aware of that based on just seeing news reports and local news of the issue of the Dan Markel murder investigation, potentially looking into the Adelsons' involvement with that investigation, correct? Answer. Amongst other things, yes. Question. Did you ever discuss those investigations, the news reports, the publicity with Charlie Adelson? Answer. Yes. Mr. Loy. Objection to form. Witness. Sorry, Alex, one more time. Mr. Loy. Just half a second, I'll be quick. Witness. Okay, you think I would know by now. Ms. Furman. Question. Can you describe what you would have discussed, Dr. Adelson, Dr. Charlie Adelson? Answer. I don't think I had any discussions with him until the young lady was arrested. Question. Catherine McBanua that was arrested? Answer. Yes. And the discussions were not like other than, it was based on the media coverage. There's nothing in confidence. I don't have a privilege. It wasn't anything he told me about the issues other than the fact that this is out there. Be prepared. You might get subpoenaed, We were actually at a restaurant once and he thought he was going to get arrested. That's about it. Question. Did he ever indicate that he believed that his practice may have been impacted by the publicity surrounding the Markel murder investigation? Mr. Loy. Objection to form. Witness. I don't remember Charlie saying that, but I do remember Harvey saying that. By Ms. Furman. Question. And what was the discussion that you had with Harvey Adelson on that subject? Answer. That the negative publicity surrounding the trial has affected his reputation with his practice in Coral Springs, and he may or may not be able to survive it. Question. Do you have a recollection of what time period that would have been? Answer. I would say probably within the last few years. I had 1 or 2 conversations with him about it in detail. Question. And this was when you talk about the Woodmont and the Coral Springs, you're talking about the Adelson Institute practice? Correct. Question. That has the Adelson name, correct? Answer. Correct. Question. And in terms of the practice being impacted by this publicity, was it your understanding that they were seeing a decrease in patients and clientele because of the negative publicity? Mr. Loy. Objection to form. Witness. Yes. Ms. Furman. Do you have some sense of what kind of impact it was having on the practice in a percentage or anything like that over this time period you're referring to? Answer. I don't know for certain. I'd have to look at the files year after year, but it's clear, that the numbers are what they are. Question. Has he discussed with you the need to potentially lay off or terminate employees because of this? Mr. Loy. Objection to form. Witness. No, never had that discussion with him. Ms. Furman. Were there other things that he discussed with you, cross-cutting? I guess they meant cost-cutting measures or things that they could do relative to decreased earnings, how they would survive this publicity? Answer. I don't remember talking to him about that. Question. And did he discuss at some point that he was planning to retire and sell the practice? Yes. And part of that motivation to sell it was due to this negative publicity? Mr. Loy. Objection to form. Witness. Well, also he's got to be in his mid-70s or later. Ms. Furman. And Harvey Adelson has sold the practice to your understanding. Is that correct? That's correct. Were you involved with the sale of the practice or had discussions with him about that? Answer. Very little. Harvey reached out to me probably in an email or a phone call, perhaps, on what the tax effect would be on the sale. And I would explain to him, is it an asset sale or is it a stock sale? And he would have income gained. So that's a standard discussion between CPA and client. Question. And did you understand that Charlie Adelson had been working at the Adelson Institute a fair amount over the last several years? Mr. Loy. Objection to form. Witness. I don't know that. By Ms. Furman. In terms of his practice and these other practices that he also worked at in the 2013, 14, 15 time period, has that part of his practice diminished? Answer: I don't know the details of that. What I do know is that when I first met the Adelsons and Charlie was a client, I know that he had traveled around a lot to do his perio work, and I know that it diminished. And I don't think we knew anything about the case for years because it was in the media. And I think that's how we found out. Question: you don't have a specific recollection sitting here exactly when this information came to you in terms of the media publicity? Answer: I don't remember the date. I mean, it would have had to have been subsequent to the arrest of the young lady. Question: Catherine Magbanua's arrest is really the thing that you think stuck out the most in terms of this becoming something you are aware of as impacting? Answer: right, because our work papers were requested for the payroll, and they were on the 2020 special that whether or not she worked for the office, nobody knew, but there were payroll records produced by the accountants. I said, wait a minute, those are ours. Question: so the 2020 episode, I believe, first aired in 2016. So I imagine that through somebody in your office that would have been brought to your attention then. Answer: right. The Adelsons had requested the payroll for that specific person, and that's when I became aware of it, that there was something that was a key element to her arrest related to the Adelsons. So I agreed to give them whatever we had at the time. We probably had hard copies of the documents related to the payroll and the bank statements and so forth. So we produced what we had. Question: so in terms of what your office did for payroll, you would do their quarterly returns for payroll purposes, correct? Answer: yes, correct. Question: and you would be accounting for all of their employees' paychecks that they were writing out of the Adelson Institute? Correct. My office would do the payroll returns and do the payroll and issue the W-2s and so forth. So those are the types of documents that, to your understanding, were requested by the Adelsons with respect to Catherine Magbanua. Answer: yes. They wanted the detail. Whatever detail we had, we could produce for them, so we gave it to them. Question: and did the police or any official entity subpoena or obtain records from you regarding the Adelson Institute or its employees? Answer: I was never contacted by law enforcement. Question: you only turned over the records directly to the Adelson? Answer: to the Adelsons, correct. Question: and have you ever been interviewed or contacted by any authorities regarding those records? Answer: not a word from law enforcement, but Harvey told me that I might be subpoenaed as a witness. Question: did you have a discussion with either Harvey or Charlie about what Catherine Magbanua's role at the Adelson Institute had been? Answer: no, not a word. Question: do you have any understanding of what her role was at the Adelson Institute? Answer: only what I saw in 2020, that she was on the staff to assist as necessary for the practice and for Charlie. Question: and then since that time period, has this been anything else? Have you discussed with Charlie anything else about the investigation? Answer: no. The only thing I discussed with Harvey more so than Charlie was that he was considering appointing me a trustee of the assets if the family was arrested. Question: okay. Have you been appointed as a trustee or power of attorney? Answer: I signed some documents a year or two ago, and that's the last I heard of it. Question: that's with respect to assets that the Adelsons, Charlie, Harvey, and Donna Adelson owned different trusts? Answer: my understanding at the time was Harvey was advised by his lawyer that they may be arrested, and if they are arrested, they would give their professionals access to their documentation to handle their affairs, and I was available for that. Question: so you've agreed to act in that role for them under those papers to your understanding? Answer: that's accurate, yes. Question: and have you done the same for Charlie, that you have that role that you would occupy for him? Mr. Loy: objection to form. Witness: I don't believe Charlie ever asked me. If the documents were presented to me from Harvey, that would have probably been on behalf of Charlie. I just don't remember it. I didn't keep copies of it. By Ms. Furman. Question, do you have an understanding that the family has also moved assets into trusts and so forth relative to concerns about the murder investigation? Mr. Loy, objection. Counsel, I think this is straying into the realm of harassment. I'm instructing the witness not to answer that question. Ms. Verman. Okay, he's raised the issue of the trust and his role, and we're here to talk about his services for Dr. Charles Adelson. So we are entitled to ask the questions. If the witness chooses not to answer, he may do that if he wants to do that. But I reject that you have the right to instruct him across the board to not answer. You're representing him today for purposes of this deposition, Mr. Loy. I do have the right to instruct him not to answer for straying into harassing questions. This is outside the scope of the case. We're here to testify. Mr. Shapiro is here to testify about the taxes and Dr. Adelson's income. He's not here to speculate about allegations brought or not, assets moved into trust or not, or precautionary measures that any of the Adelsons might have taken with respect to this investigation. It's private. It's totally outside the scope. I'm instructing him not to answer that question. By Ms. Furman. All right. With respect to Harvey's sale of the practice, did he ever express concern that Charlie would not have the Adelson Institute available to him to work at after he sold the practice? Answer, I can't recall. Question, and do you have an understanding of what role, if any, Charlie had in the sale of the practice? Was he involved in the negotiations, or did he ever contemplate purchasing the practice in the recent sale of the practice? Answer, never had that discussion with Charlie, never had any type of communications with him about that. It was all Harvey. Question, do you have an understanding that Charlie was still working at the Adelson Institute up until recently? Answer, I can't speculate because I don't know. Question, with the Adelson Institute, once it was sold from Charlie to Harvey, that sale occurred in 2015, correct? Answer, yes, that's accurate. After the sale of the Adelson Institute, did Charlie Adelson receive any compensation, to your understanding, for work that he performed at the Adelson Institute? Answer, I don't think we show any income related to Charlie from the Adelson Institute subsequent to his sale of the stock. Question, so that would be once he was able to sell the practice back to his father, Harvey. The debt was canceled. Correct. And then Harvey was operating Adelson Institute on his own, to your understanding? Answer, that's accurate, yes. Question, and in terms of income flowing out of the Adelson Institute to Charlie, he didn't get a W-2? Answer, I don't believe so, correct. Question, and in terms of payments to him out of the Adelson Institute checking account, if there were payments to him from that checking account, would that have been reflected as income to him? Answer, if they were expensed by the entity, it would have been reported as income to Charlie. If it was a loan, then it would have been booked on the balance sheet as a loan receivable to or from Charlie or Charlie's entity. So I don't believe there was compensation expense or any type of fee expense on the Adelson Institute to Charlie subsequent to a sale. Question, so separate from whether Charlie was compensated for work at the Adelson Institute, do you have an understanding whether Charlie did actually perform services, periodontal services, at the Adelson Institute after the sale of the Adelson Institute back to Harvey? Answer, I mean, it would be, if I say I don't know, that's not the right answer, because I knew that he was on the staff of the Adelson Institute, and I'm sure that he did work, but I can say with certainty what he did or how much he did, no. But I know that he was involved in rendering services. Whether or not he did them, I don't know. I don't know the daily activities or the schedules. It was an accountant type of relationship. Question, okay. But your understanding, at least, was that he did perform some periodontal services. You don't have an understanding of the amount? Answer, I don't know that with certainty. No, I cannot say that under oath with certainty. I mean, you would think as a layman that, yes, he would be available to perform services. So that's sort of where I'm advising right now, that I don't have any exact knowledge of that, that he performed services. I don't have any document that would indicate that he was due compensation or anything like that. Question, And during the time that he owned the Adelson Institute, did you have an understanding that he performed services there? Same answer. I don't know. I don't know if he was working there or just his affiliation from there. I mean, we just don't know the intricacies of these practice. We knew that we are going to just book the income and expenses based on the individual entities, and that's what we did. I don't know the details of their schedules, their systems, their work-related backgrounds. It is just outside the scope of my relationship. Question. All right, I think we have in front of you the 2016 DMD-PA tax returns. Yes, and we've been talking about this 2016 as the year that the disability claim was asserted. For this year, you see gross receipts of $669,058 and the cost of goods sold of $80,000, correct? Yes. Compensation of officers, $234,000, is a higher number than prior years, correct? That's accurate, yes. Do you have any understanding of why the compensation increased that year for Charlie? Answer, good question. He may have wanted to fund more of his defined benefit or SEP plan, so we would have told him to increase his salary. Question, on this tax return to DMD-PA, is there anything where you would see a SEP type contribution? Answer, no, it was probably funded personally.